going to go in. And because this furniture piece is so small, I'm not really doing a lot of wet on wet. However, when you noticed with, for example, the sofa piece, I had to do some wet on wet to get rid of some of the strong green. I had to drop in a wet, so the green was wet, and I had to drop in the wet red. For this piece now, to achieve the wood surface around over here and the metal, I'm just going to jump right in and see if I can go for this with burnt sienna and get a nice burnt sienna for my wood top. And I'm going to start up here with a wash of it, and it's really, really light. So notice our burnt sienna doesn't appear to be as dark as the burnt sienna of the book. So what does that mean for us? That means I'm going to add some burnt sienna and mix it with Payne's Gray. So the Payne's Gray is very dark. I'm going to add a little burnt sienna and see if I can achieve, there we go. Ooh, I got way too dark. So I'm putting my brush in to the water, and I'm going to dip now a bit of the burnt sienna back onto that. There we go. So now I've spread that across. So the mixture of Payne's Gray, a little bit of Payne's Gray with the burnt sienna, helps me get a darker wood value. So you can see here I'm just doing a base color. That's the start of it. This is all going to be a wood, so I can leave some white spaces, but ultimately I am going to have to drop in little bits of the burnt sienna and the Payne's Gray so that I can get kind of a nice mixture of dark wood tones. Okay, so, because as we said, the burnt sienna is not going to achieve that all itself. So I'm now looking at this. So one of the things with this particular piece, I can see it's darker back here on this edge, and then there's a lot of darker here. So I'm going to drop in some of that. Nice Payne's Gray with some sienna. I'm just dropping it in and spreading it. So watercolor does take patience. I don't always have it, but I'm learning to. And look at that wood tone kind of coming out. It's actually gentle use of okay. So there's our wood top on our table. So I've sort of achieved a little bit of the technique. You can see I'm starting to work in that nice wood top. Now I'm going to go ahead and use only Payne's Gray for a nice wash of Payne's Gray. So I'm going to make it very, very pretty much tea, consistency. So I'm over here mixing. And I want to see where the dark marks are for the metal base. Okay? And it's basically starting on the parts of the legs that are the shadowed pieces. All right, so I dropped in some Payne's Gray, and it's really dark. So I'm going to brush some of that off and pick it up because there's just no way I can use that all in that technique. Okay, so I'm going to drop some of it there and some of it here on the legs. You guys can see that I'm using Payne's Gray to get that nice dark line. So I put some Payne's Gray down and I made a mistake. I put too much of it. So I'm not adding any more paint from my palette. I'm actually rinsing off on the side here, and I'm going to take some of that Payne's Gray of where I dropped in too much and add it over here. So for us, Payne's Gray is actually a really great color to use for neutrals, so gray neutrals. All right, and so I'm achieving some of this. I'm getting the base. I need to now get a darker little bit of the Payne's Gray. I actually do need some of that for this side over here. Okay. And I've got some of it going across. And as you remember up here, I'm adding my darker values. This little guy's kind of has a little nodule on the legs for feet. Okay. And I'm dropping in the color. And so you can start to see the effect of the table. And you can see that there's some sense of light hitting it. This is very much that use of chrome, where I talked about abstract color, almost the way we use with our pen and ink, our values. Okay, so I have to let this dry a little bit because I want to get some reflection on the top there. I need to add Payne's Gray and more burnt umber to the wood to give the value. But these other guys are ready for me now to go back over them with a little bit of value for line work. So I'm going to use, Payne's Gray is, as I said, a really great gray. If maybe I mix it with the Ultra Deep, I can achieve a darker value of this Ultra Deep and try to achieve some sense of line work. Okay, so I'm adding in, and I'm going to do, if we know that the light is coming from the upper right, this all is going to be darker in here, right? Okay, back underneath these pillows is going to be darker, and look at, gosh, there's still so much water there. So you have to be very careful. I'm going to try to get that edge. I'm going to put some there. I really want a little bit more of that Ultra Deep. I don't want it to be so Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is great, but my sofa, or my chair, I keep saying sofa, is meant to be this blue. I don't want it to, you know, come off as only being Payne's Gray blue. Yeah. Okay, so kind of getting a little bit of that blue. It's going to come in here because the pillow should be blocking some of the light, and I'm just going to add in. And now I'm dipping my brush in the water, and I just try to achieve a nice wash. That's what wash means. Okay, I'm trying to not make it all dabs of color. And I'm going to put some of that blue, and I'm going to blend some of this here. Oh man, you can't see what I'm doing. All right, so I'm sitting here blending a little bit by adding water and just taking that blue and moving it over. Okay, and I really want this to be a blue furniture piece. It's not a red, so, or not a burnt umber, so I have to go over with that blue and try to get some of it back, because unfortunately I made a lot of mistakes here, you know, early on, and my blue got lost. I'm trying to get some of that back. And let's see, Ultra Deep is the color that I am trying to make this. Okay, there we go. See, that's more of like the blue I want. You know, I think it's a blue furniture piece for me. And a little bit up here on the arm, the side of the arm. And I'm going in. So trying to capture the strong values, same way we would have done with our pens, our pen and ink, our marker, you know, leaving a lot of white space. We're doing the same with watercolor. Okay. So I am finishing off some of these edges so that I can get definite lines. And it's a blue furniture piece, so my intention is really to try to get some of that blue back. There we go. So I'm dropping in blue color. Okay. My orange pillows, I can give them a little bit more up here, but you can see I didn't get enough blue off my brush when I did that. So that looks kind of like a neutral, and I want to drop in a little bit of the burnt sienna and the orange to give me my pillows. Okay, there we go. So, start of a piece, not too bad. It's not great, but it's not too bad. Okay, now I'm going to go back over to the table because it's dry, and I'm going to work a little bit with that ultra deep, where if you remember, the table that is in the book has some strong, nice, straight lines. Those are squares, abstract shapes. So if you remember, with chrome, we use straight lines to help give chrome. Well, class, do the same thing. You know, it helps to reinforce reflection. So I am doing a straight square right there, dropping it in, and let's see, I'll flip my hand this way so you can see it. And I'm dropping in a nice square to try to achieve a reflection. Okay, I'm going to give me a nice straight line there. And let's do a little bit on this back portion here, a straight line. And I've got a little bit of a reflected glass table. Not bad, not bad. So the last piece that I'll probably do with that is I could always go and add white to that if I wanted to even be more reflective. So one of the things I did earlier with this sheet, which I was practicing, so it was a version of what you were doing in class, is I then showed how just applying a thin line of white, it had to be pretty opaque, so it's very milky, almost cream texture, consistency, that it creates white. So if I have to go back over some objects to put some white in, to let the light bounce around, because maybe I didn't leave enough white space, I could do that. Okay, so this sofa that's here, the large sofa, I'm going to play with light coming from the right side, and I'm going to do a little bit of a wash, and then I'm going to also do the shadows again for this piece. With this particular one, I'm going to make it turn into and be more of the red with the hints of the green to allow those to be the values in the shadow, but I want it to be a red sofa. So I've got two reds in my palette. I have Modder Lake, and then I also have sort of the red light, and I think I'm going to just play around with those because I think they're really cool colors. And I want to get a base color down because if you remember, these things have to dry so that I can get values down. So there's my sofa. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with the Modder Lake because it's a little darker in value, and I'll probably drop in the red light because the red light is just really strong. So I'm mixing my Modder Lake, creating a little space for me on my palette. Again, use a paper plate, guys, if you want to have more space. I'm just doing this because I'm trying to get through the video for you. So I'm here mixing. There's my Modder Lake. I love that red. And with my sofas, so I'm going to go back to one of my sofa views to help me achieve this. Let's go to this particular one because I just love the straight lines of it. On page 273. And I'm going to use that structure to help me complete my sofa. So you can hear me dropping things, dropping. Okay, so this sofa that's down here, I'm going to try to achieve it in red, and then I'm going to use some green for my maybe metal bolsters, I don't know, so for shadow. So I'm making a very light Modder Lake, that's my red color base, and I'm just going to go in and do some wash, and so it kind of looks pink, it's fine, it doesn't bother me. But I'm using a very flat brush right now. I can go in with other, pick up my values, and now I'm going to definitely, so when I take that flat brush and run it across, And notice that the paper is dry. It allows for some of these really cool streaks that you want to achieve with the front surface, you know, because you don't want to have, you want to leave white space. And I'm kind of just going back with the pink. I am going to drop a lighter pink here. And I'm dipping my brush in water to just start. And then I'm going to put this pink down everywhere. You know, it's kind of Modder Lake pink. It's just to give me my base color, okay? This one, get a little color there. And I'm going to allow, you can see I have a mark here. I accidentally made a mistake on it earlier. And I mean, it's a red sofa, so I'm going to put in pink as my base because it's just a light color wash, okay? And I know that the light coming down here is going to be blocked here on the arm, so the light may hit this part of the sofa, but this back corner definitely is going to be darker, right over here and there and that bolster. So they're all going to definitely be darker than, say, what's happening here. And then we'll hit underneath that bolster, this whole arm here. I'm just kind of turning and using this flat brush to achieve some of these straight lines quickly. You could do this with small brush, no problem, okay? All right, so there's the base of the color. I'm now going to pick up a small brush, dip it in water, and I'm going to drop in some of this fun red light color and the Modder Lake mixed. I'm hoping they'll give me a fun, like kind of reddish tone. And I want to go in here and drop it in. Ooh, wow, that is cool. So I've got my red, dropping it in my values. I want the red here. And I like this a lot. And I'm dropping it over around there because this whole arm, so my piece has some really cool red. And dropping in. When you drop in color, remember if there's not a lot of pigment on it and it's a lot of water, it's basically going to do the blooming. All right, so I now want to put a little bit of red concentrated at the, for me, I'm dropping it at the little buttons. You can see that kind of coming through. And I'm just making my buttons stand out because it's kind of fun for me. And I'm dropping in darker red here. And the bolster, I am going to make the bolster red too. I was kind of playing around with that, but I am going to make it red. I'm just going to use green. So dropping in lots of red. So now I'm going to mix some Modder. Look at that. Oh my God, that's actually kind of crazy. So I need to blend that. So I'm picking up this color. I dropped it in. I went way too crazy, and it's blooming. So I've got a problem where I need to go and actually rinse a little bit of it off and get a little bit of a drier brush and find a way to pick up some of this red and utilize it. If it's intended to be on this furniture piece, I don't want to get rid of that color, but I've just gone way too far in one place. That's over here. So I'm trying to pick some of that up and move it and, you know, not worry that it's going to ruin what I've done, you know, because I know that I need that color other places. So if I can just steal from the area where I made the mistake. Okay. Now, some of you guys can practice where you're doing much more of a dry brushing kind of technique with watercolor. And that would be something that would be more like this, or along that back. And I'm just literally applying direct color to that to get the definition. And it might, you know, create a stronger line. Versus down here where I did like, whoa, massive color. But I was having fun. I don't know. I think you've got to find joy in this somewhere. So I'm dropping in some of this fun red over to these shadow components, okay? Let me get this side of that furniture, this side here, and I'm going to take that nice strong red and go and pull some of to the shadows. Make some definition here. So kind of bring in some line work. You can see I've already made a couple mistakes, but that's okay. And drop in some red. Professional gap. Don't forget your professional gap. Okay. Now my sofa, not too bad, but I think it, it feels like it could be some kind of velvet, but I do want to give it some more color, so I'm going to do a nice maybe wash over this where I put more of the red coming across in a stronger technique. So there's a wash of that. So I want a little bit more. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to that really strong Madder Lake and try to put some of this right to those buttons. That's me. All right. All right. Okay. And I'm just achieving sort of these red tones. Okay. So there's some of my watercolor sofa. Now I'm going to go ahead and let these dry because I'm going to use Payne's Gray to do some of my outlines for them. All right, so my last piece here is, of course, going to be the window drapery, okay? And so I actually am going to choose a couple spaces. I'm going to use page 393 to help me achieve that, okay? And it's definitely going to be based on using Viridian. The Madder Lake is some color opposite, and then Cerulean and Ultra Deep for the window, and kind of achieve some of that. But I want to get a little bit of a wash of green and just apply that to the drapery. And if you remember with the drapery from the marker, what we do is we keep white space closer to the windows. So I'm going to go ahead and put some some water down on the window, close to the window here. And you can see now when I add in, I'm going to do a wash of the Viridian that I mix with a little bit of burnt sienna because I don't want it to be such a strong green. I want to have a little bit more of a hunter color. And I'm going to go to try to achieve some of my drapery here. But watch what happens when I get closer to the window. I had this darker color I started with further away on dry paper, but then where it went towards, where it already had the water, it made it go much lighter. So I've got some drapery. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I've already put my water down, and you can kind of see, I think, some of the glistening where it is. But I'm going to start with this straight color on dry paper, so it's kind of a tea base. And that was a mixture of Viridian and burnt sienna to try to get kind of a green. And watch what happens when I move that green towards the water. Creates this really nice watercolor effect. Okay, so there I've got some drapery, and it's starting to kind of do a pretty drapery color and of a wash. Okay, so then for the actual greenery out the window, and then the blue for the sky, I'm going to treat it kind of like bushes out here, kind of the way we did with our other project. I'm going to do more of a burnt sienna with a hint of green, but I want it to be a little bit more, I hope I can get this, like a olivey tone, I guess, because you can see down here that's what sort of is happening. So I'm going to do a little bit of that between, yep, I got it, my windows, and leave some of my window pane. And I'm just doing a little bit of green here, and I'll leave simple effect, and I think I'll just do a little bit of green there. Now, so what I've got is I've got a decent amount of green that I've applied and left some window pane, but I want to do a little bit more burnt sienna because it's the brown tone that I want to do down here into, like, you know, part of the bushes type of thing. So I've got some green, and you can see I've left white space. Maybe I'll do a little hint of the burnt sienna up there, and I'm going to drop in a little bit of the green because I want it to be more like bushes and not look like a green window film on it or something. Okay, so now, last but not least, I'm going to do the blue sky. So I'm going to try with a very light cerulean. Very light. See if I can get a nice little sky up here. And I'm going to do a little bit of blue sky. All right, and that's not bad. But once I do this blue, okay, then I'm going to drop in. Oops, you can see that I totally made a mistake. I forgot to do the green color over here. So I'm going to pick some of that green up from over there, and you can see I missed it over on this side. And some of that. Okay, and drop in some of the green. Give it a little bit of effect. Okay. All right, and so with the cerulean, you can see it's kind of a nice light blue, but it's more of a watercolor blue. Like a blue that's better for water, I should say, not watercolor blue. But I'm going to pick some of that up the way we did the clouds before in class. And I'm feeling I need to do a little bit of the ultra deep because it doesn't feel so sky-like. The ultra deep just seems to do a little bit better job of that. Yeah, so you might want to instead try a little bit with the ultra deep. But I mixed them, and I got a great color. So I think there's nothing wrong with mixing, and you can get your blue sky here. I love it. I do. I actually love the blue mixed. It's a nice blue sky. Okay. Yeah, those two work really well together. The cerulean, and then you drop in the blue. I dropped in way too much. So I'm going to have to pick it up. You know, what happens? You pick up when you make a mistake. I'm dropping the blue in. And I'm getting a blue sky. All right, so as you can see that I dropped too much blue over ultra deep blue. And I'll pick some of it up. There. Okay. So I've started to get the sky technique. So I now have, with all of my drawings, base drawings of watercolor. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead over all of these and use a little bit of Payne's Gray, just because it's a fabulous gray to give us neutrals. And I'm going to enhance all of my drawings with a little bit of Payne's Gray. So this way I can do it in the shadows for the molding. So if we look at here for this particular window one, I'm going to add in some molding color. Watch what I'm going to do with this. So where the line work is, I've kept the dark. Okay, to start the color. And now I'm basically, the whole process with all of what I'm doing with the Payne's Gray, this is just creating value. You guys could do this with another color. You could do this its darker value. You could do this with pen and ink, right? But what I've done is I keep kind of taking some of that Payne's gray off so that I can go in and give me a nice shadow. So I put the Payne's gray down, but I'm now picking it up. Okay, I'm going to go over to my palette where I have my Payne's gray, my nice little Payne's gray palette. And I'm going to add it into maybe the windows. So I put probably too much down and it ended up splashing it. So beautiful, I have this guy, which is my handy dandy paper towel. And I can pick some of that up, and I'm going to go in and get some of these window mullions. Everything's probably just a little too wet to be playing around with this. I probably am in danger zone. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to let this all dry. I mean, I could go up to the curtains and do a fun value up here in the molding. But I'm going to have to wait a little bit to get any of the shadows and the values down here, which is what I was trying to do. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next furniture piece. And again, I'm just doing my Payne's gray value added, and I'm putting some here. I'm going over this corner because it's closest to me. I'm going to add some shadows to some of my pillow back here, this back corner to give my shadow value, Payne's gray. I'm adding to the line here for the edge of the sofa, or the chair, it's not a sofa. And I'm just using Payne's gray to help achieve some of that line work effect. Now, if you want to, go for it and just use your pen and ink and try, okay? I am trying to be softer about it here and using the Payne's gray to get my values. So I'm just have a little bit of Payne's gray mixed off. You can't see it, but it's right off of the paper right here. And I'm simply using that. Every time that I'm away from my paper, it's because I'm dipping in a little bit of Payne's gray to get my value. And I think you're starting to see a better chair forming here, right? So now I need to go in there. Okay, I'm going to finish it off with a little bit more Payne's gray at the edges, and I'm using Professional Gap to define some of my furniture piece. I'm doing my shadows in here, my shadow there under those pillows, the back corner here, because the light